Yeah, thank you, Michelle, and it's a pleasure to be here representing the business community on such a critical business issue that we've been talked about. And again, thank you to our sponsors, NJM and Rowan University, for sponsoring this very, very informative discussion today. So we're going to transition just a little bit. So we talked a lot about the legal implications and how our businesses can get ready for employees and themselves as employers. Now I want to talk about an issue that is very, very important to the state of New Jersey, something that my team spends an awful lot of time discussing across all sectors of the economy, and that is our workforce. And NJBIA has leaned into ensuring that we have a highly skilled, adequate workforce to attract our employers. Well, we are privileged here now to have a new industry coming, or is here, I should say, I'm sorry, is here and is hiring, and also has some specific needs, as do our other employers. And so we want to get out on the forefront of this, especially in light of the fact that we all know that we're having such a hiring crisis right now. I'm sure it's probably going to be impacting your industry as well. And so I am joined by a terrific group of panelists who will talk us through what the workforce development needs are for the new industry that's here in the state. And so I want to introduce our panelist, Aubrey Flanagan, who is Manager of Professional and Corporate Development at Raritan Valley Community College Workforce Training Center. Thank you, Aubrey, for joining us. Kyle Hayes. Kyle is Head of Talent Acquisition for Curaleaf Holdings. Welcome, Kyle. Thanks for joining us. To Jennifer Madden, Assistant Dean and Director of Graduate Studies for the Rohr College of Business at Rowan University, our sponsor. Thanks for being here, my alma mater. Just had to plug that. Sorry about Scott Rutter, who's a partner at Vernon Trent Public Affairs and the founder and president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. So, Scott, thanks so much, and thank you for the continued collaboration with NJBIA. I look forward to working with you on many fronts related to the cannabis industry. So, folks, we're here to talk about workforce. So we're starting from the ground up in New Jersey, although we do obviously have medicinal cannabis that has been in effect for some time. So new industries being created, some are going to maybe even be lost. What kind of jobs are we talking about being created over the next maybe 1 to 5 years? Go ahead.
Sure. So there's going to be all kinds of great jobs. I mean, there's going to be jobs that are plant-touching jobs. They're going to be working for Curaleaf and cultivation. We're going to have HR professionals. We're going to have basically mechanical engineers working on equipment. You're going to have your store associates. There's a whole host of jobs just internally that you would have in any other company. So cannabis is a business, and just like any other business, it's a somewhat new product for people. So people are trying to wrap their heads around it. But at the end of the day, you're going to have attorneys and accountants and service professionals and customer outreach, and you're going to have marketing folks. And so any profession, whether it's the janitorial services all the way up to the CEO and everything on the ancillary market as well, it's the same thing. So whatever you're thinking about, what, in a traditional business, that's exactly what you're going to find in the cannabis business. But it has so many different facets. So the manufacturing, the cultivation, and so forth. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I'll just say at our dispensary settings in New Jersey, we've been adding obviously like more associates to help with all the increase in flow that we've seen there. We've also at Curaleaf tripled our cultivation capacity in the state. So like with adding all of those people, we need more HR, more IT, more finance, all those roles that you would think of in a typical business. We're adding all of those as well.
Do you anticipate any industries starting up or being lost because of recreational?
Well, there's expansion. So like security. for example. So security is expanding. Every dispensary, every cultivation facility has a requirement for security that's attached to the state police, the cameras and everything else. So there's more and more security companies that are out there that are transitioning from maybe they were something we're protecting like an apartment complex or something like that. Now they're moving and expanding into the cultivation or in the cannabis space. Those things are expanding. The marketing opportunities, so we're going to have probably at the end of the day about 1,000 license holders in, over the next few years. Every one of them is going to need a marketing team. Everybody's going to need, that IT professionals to ensure that they're going to get their proper amount of market share. So it's going to be a heavy competitive environment, and that's where you're going to see a lot of these other professionals. How do I differentiate myself? And so you're going to see like expansion of marketing.
Yeah, something that we've heard over the last year or so is we've really been exploring what the cannabis industry needs in terms of coming from higher education, is that it's pretty close to being its own economy. It needs everything, and they need transferable skills to come into that space. So to extend what Scott was saying, you can think about they need accountants, they need people in finance, they need people in supply chain. Everything, any kind of job that exists somewhere, it's eventually going to be needed in cannabis.
Right. It's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. And if you have talent that you've pre-existing talent and skills from your past jobs and you're looking to transfer those into the cannabis industry, there are training programs, small training programs that can give you that little bit of industry insight so you know how to position yourself and your skills for these new jobs in the cannabis industry. So that's my plug for my programs at Raritan Valley Community College.
It's true though. I mean, all that transitional skill sets is going to be there. There are challenges with cannabis as an industry because it's still federally illegal. So banking's harder and different. How we deduct our traditional business taxes are different. So you not just want to get an accountant, you're going to need an accountant who's familiar with concepts like 280E, which is a subset of the tax code, things like that. Just going to be a different type of different type of accounting. And then on the marketing side, there's a lot of restrictions because of the nature of this industry. So having those professionals who can work through those nuances are going to be important. So getting job training at state colleges, community colleges is a very important part of the process.
If you could elaborate a little bit further on this point, as somebody who is manufacturing and selling, people think of recreational cannabis and they may think of just growing a plant. Clearly much more complicated than that. So we already talked about there's going to be a lot of the traditional types of jobs that other businesses utilize, but could you go into a little bit more depth on, do you need chemists, engineers, retail managers? Like, talk to us a little bit about what really is needed in terms of those specific jobs, boots on the ground.
Absolutely. So within our cultivation facilities, we have full labs. They do extraction there for like our cartridge products and things like that. So we use HPLC technicians, which are analytical chemists. We have, a bunch of people from botany backgrounds or people with horticulture backgrounds that work in these centers. And then within our retail facilities, we need retail managers, we need, inventory specialists that are, all of this product is tracked very specifically. So it needs, we need all these new people to help with the increase in all the product we're seeing with the, adult use. So we're adding, a bunch to our cultivation facilities with the scientists and, the people working with the plant, but then also to the retail just to keep up with the demand. So a lot of, logistics, inventory, and then, like you said, the scientists on the cultivation side.
And not to mention, I'm assuming, again, the accountants, the lawyers that are needed as well. So.
Well, and it is not just a plant, right? It is just a plant. Quite frankly, if you just want to grow a plant, which we're not allowed yet in New Jersey, but eventually we will for patients specifically, but it is just a simple thing. Once you industrialize it, that's a whole different animal, right? So having that consistency across the board every time. So every time you go and you go get a sun-kissed beverage, it tastes the same. And 2 weeks later, it tastes the same. So you want to have that consistency. So it's incumbent upon the cultivators to have the technology there and have the experienced professionals there to ensure that it's a proper product and it doesn't have bacteria or mold and And that's where the advent of testing labs come from. So we don't test our tomatoes and our corn that we grow at the local farmers market, but we definitely need to for cannabis, because if you consume cannabis and it's got something in there, bacteria otherwise, it could be harmful from an ingestion perspective. So the testing labs, professionals at the cultivation facilities will help ensure that this is a very safe environment.
Yeah, we've also added like a bunch of quality roles as well,
Right.
just for the cultivation facilities to make sure, like Scott said, everything is standard and consistent when we're putting these products out.
So Scott, you had mentioned that we have, how many licenses?
Well, there's 12 active licenses, and each of them have different different dispensary. Some have 3, some have 2, some have 1. There are a bunch of approved ones coming out from the 2019 round. And then, of course, right now we're going through a process of issuing new licenses.
So you had mentioned potentially 1,000.
Right.
We're not even over 50.
Correct. And I say eventually, right? So you look at what's a fully realized market look like? And I'm not certain it'll be 1,000, maybe 800, maybe 500, maybe 300.
A lot more than we have today.
Much more than we have today, which is going to be great for competition. It's going to be great for the consumer. Competition will help drive down costs. That's been a big concern, for a lot of patients. But now that we have patients, now we have adult consumers. Now we're going to have more licenses. Hopefully, that'll drive down the cost for your purchase. But yeah, no, it's.
So we have a workforce crisis. Right? So where's your workforce coming from at this point in time then?
So Curaleaf actually does partnerships with a bunch of organizations. So within New Jersey, we partner with From the Block to the Boardroom, which is like a second chance hiring initiative. So we try to hire like 10% of our new hires from populations impacted by low-level cannabis-related offenses. So with those relationships, we hire, a lot of people that way. And then we've also been partnering with universities to get people that are in these cannabis programs that have just been, created to get these people with that experience on board at Curaleaf.
So I'm assuming you're going to need to have a supply chain ready to go with folks who are going to enter this facility. So I'd love to hear from our 2 education partners about what is your role in this? I heard about the partnerships, but how are you geared up to address this demand?
Want me to start? Okay, so a little over a year ago, Rowan University launched a Cannabis Institute that focuses on research, policy, and workforce development. But I'll focus more on the workforce development component, which is making sure that we are finding ways to build and offer curriculum that is going to meet industry demand. So right now, the content that we have, some of it is live, some of it is starting in the fall, falls into 3 basic categories of business, chemistry or biochemistry, and regulations. We have much of this content, all of the content is at the graduate level. Some of it is at the undergraduate level. Some more of it will be coming through the undergraduate level as well. And I can speak from the business side. We talked with a lot of people in industry at different levels, thinking about the MBA program, because that would be putting into the workforce more mid-level or senior level people into the industry. And we said, what are the pain points? What are the issues that you have? Because we know that they need all of the crossover talent. We knew that they needed people with all the functional skills, the accounting, the finance, the marketing, the supply chain. And the 2 points that industry continued to tell us were pain points is lack of familiarity with the evolution of the industry and where it is, cultural aspects, social aspects, things that if people aren't familiar with them, they're not meeting up with industry demands or consumer demands or interests. So we built some curriculum in that area and also focused on business model innovation. So some of the points that Scott touched on, the idea of what's the business now, what's it going to change over time, because it's changing so rapidly. So if you think about business model innovation, every industry, every company needs to continuously think about business model innovation. But when you're thinking about it in cannabis, there are all of these additional constraints and restrictions and challenges. So pairing that up together so that people coming out of our program are going to be able to handle all of that change and volatility and problem solving. And then we have cannabinoid chemistry, and we have biochemistry, and we have all of the different thinking about legislation. And I need my notes for this one a little bit. So thinking about creating and developing legislation, evaluating legislation, interpreting legislation. They're my rough notes on where it falls into those different areas. So this is our beginning. This is our starting point. And as the industry grows in New Jersey and beyond, we will continue to offer additional curriculum, partnering with industry, making sure that we keep the dialogue open so that as we're developing coursework and programs, that it's going to meet what the industry anticipates that it's going to need.
Right, exactly. And honestly, where can I sign up for that MBA program? Because it just sounds so incredible with the policy analysis and the business systems. So on the flip side, higher education has two different customers, right? They have the youth, and they also have pivoting professionals. They have training programs that can help individuals take the skills that they have and then position it for the industry. So you asked, where is the workforce coming from? I think it's coming from partnerships. It's coming from the partnerships that you described with other labor market intermediaries to help give back to those who have experienced all of these negative externalities of the illegality of cannabis. It's also coming from partnerships with education and industry, right? We're working with industry to develop programs so our graduates and our alumni and our participants can move right into the jobs. So just to piggyback off of one alumni success story at RV, is we had the first training program. It's like 5 days, it's 15 hours, one Monday night, just for 3 hours. And it runs through the laws all the way to role playing. When you stand behind the counter, how do you act towards a patient? How do you act towards a consumer who wants to buy this product, right? That program became so because we had a dispensary applicant say, where can I hire people? And then RV said, well, we have some pipelines, but what if you created a training program to ensure that you had that qualified workforce ready when this came up? So they created this very short-term training program, and it really has grown and scaled. It's also offered at RCB, Rowan College of South Jersey. So it's really just taken off. And the individuals who take that program are pivoting professionals, are HR individuals looking to get to the industry. There are people on the MMP medical marijuana program. And like I said in the success story is, there's some individual who took it and they just did packaging, advanced manufacturing, like on the floor. They took our class. We have like very short job fairs with the people who are hiring in our area. I should say that Raritan Valley covers 100 and Somerset counties, and there are some dispensaries and warehouses that will be there. So we had some job fairs. He got picked up by Verano and he moved from advanced manufacturing, no industry experience, took the training class, and now is a production supervisor, a packaging supervisor, who helped usher in this adult use market. So very, very cool to see how someone takes their existing talent, takes a very short training program, and then flips it. But there are needs to very much so have that mid to senior level management, have that policy expertise, to understand the strategic aspect of it. So that's where your workforce is coming from.
Thank you. I'm going to go a step further though. So when we're out talking about the workforce demands of the future across all industries, a lot of times our companies say, you know, the workforce isn't trained for the needs today. We need to get our students more intrigued about not only a 4-year degree, but also maybe a community college degree. And NJBIA is in a formal partnership with our community colleges to address some of that pipeline and that synergy as well between our 2 years, 4 years, VOTEC, K through 12. They also say we got to start earlier, middle school, high school, educating. So my question to you is, has the industry started to approach our K through 12 education system to have a conversation about, I know everyone's like looking at me, but have we started the conversation about, you know, this is a viable career pathway. You could be a chemist, you can be an accountant, you can be an attorney focusing on legalized cannabis in New Jersey. And if not, how do you see that going forward?
I'll say that I've heard discussions about that within the cannabis industry. I've not yet heard those discussions on the K through 12 side happening, other than personal individual conversations of people who want it to happen, but not from a speaking for the school system official standpoint.
Right.
You know, so people who are friends, family, associates, who are teachers in administration, So I think that the awareness is there. I'm not sure how ready people are for that.
I think it's a readiness thing. So it's
Yes.
also, we're brand new. So we are brand new. I mean, there's only 12 operators in the state of New Jersey. And I mentioned there's going to be a lot more than that. But that conversation is actually happening at the K through 12, but they just don't mention cannabis. So it's a technology, skill set. It's all the skill sets we talked about earlier that you're going to need
So the
for the
STEAM and the
future.
STEM focus.
That's exactly right. So STEM and STEAM, that has been a big part of our overall dialogue. So when we talk about cannabis legalization and making sure that it's a very inclusive industry, the STEM and STEAM really plays a big role in that. We're going to have 40 to 50,000 new jobs, right, created from this industry just here in New Jersey. And you talked earlier about like where are we going to pull these folks from? I will tell you, it's an exciting industry. It's brand new and it's super cool, right? So you just think about all those things. And so those younger professionals, like, I want to do this. I want to try this. I want to be in there. Those of us who are actually in here know it's a really tough job. It is a real job and it's a tough job, but it's a cool industry to be in. So I think we're going to have, it won't be easy to attract that, all these folks all at once, but it's going to be systematic. And I think we're going to get the right professionals there.
I also mentioned a little bit about being, all inclusive and such. And I know that the legislation also sought to address some of the equity, challenges in the state and to address this issue by providing some jobs and opportunities to those in disadvantaged communities. Love to hear from the panel, what are some of the things being done? And I know, Kyla, you started mentioning some of them, but what do you envision are some of those collaborations moving forward to attract, a very broad workforce? And I can also say we also work a lot even with the disability community as well. So what do you check moving forward?
So I had mentioned like the one organization that we partner with specifically in New Jersey, but we have, it's called our Rooted in Good initiative, where we, partner with different suppliers or vendors for a more equitable, sustainable, and diverse cannabis industry. So the goal is for us to partner with 420 of these, partners by 2025. So right now we've already partnered with 100 after 1 year. And we have that 420 goal because we know that's a lucky number.
So during the years of campaigning for legalization, right? So try to get it through the legislative process first, and then when that was able to get done that way, we went through the ballot initiative and it passed. We didn't win this conversation, this debate, this campaign based on money and profit, right? We won this debate based on social justice and social equity. So when you look at the legislation and how it's crafted, it does do a lot of great benefits for communities that have been disadvantaged. So, whether you're a woman, a minority, a service disabled veteran, you have that conviction of cannabis, from way before. And I'll describe that if anybody's really interested in that, why that's really critical. But also, just making sure that this industry is inclusive, that we created these impact zones, that we're making sure we're going to the right communities. There's a lot of concern that, this is just going to be in the urban environment, not the suburban areas and all that stuff during the initial conversations. But quite frankly, when you look at this, there's a ton of activity going in. Everybody wants to be in Jersey City and Hoboken and Elizabeth and these other places, but the suburban market's going to be huge. The population is going to really dictate where these shops are going to open up. And like I said, we're going to have a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different things. But when you look at how they're going to prioritize the licensing process, it really does go back to social justice and social equity.
And I'm assuming our educational partners as well.
Yeah. So I'll mention 2 points. So for the MBA program, generally, what we seek to draw into our MBA program and prepare are responsible leaders. So there are core required courses that everyone takes on responsible leadership and people, profit, planet, and things related to leadership with that focus of responsibility in leadership. When we think about the cannabis concentration or the elective classes in the MBA that relate to cannabis, there are the very specific plant related or cannabis industry related courses that students can take. But we've also chosen electives across the university. They're not specifically focused on cannabis, but they're graduate level courses from different places that students can take to tailor it for what they want to do in the industry. And that can focus, these classes can focus on things like diversity and inclusion. We have classes on sustainable development. We have classes on what it means for social movements and social changes, and what happens when different regulations impact different types of populations. So that information can also be used, understood, adapted, brought into the cannabis industry. And we are in early stages of partnering with industry. Universities and colleges, we're really eager and we want to partner with the cannabis industry. We also, Aubrey and I have talked about this quite a bit, we also have certain limitations. We can have relationships with anyone and all different organizations. We're restricted in some of the formalities and some of those relationships. So what I would say is, please, if you're thinking about, if we're talking in any of our audience is actually in the cannabis industry or moving into the industry, please reach out, and that goes for social groups and organizations as well. Reach out to your university, your colleges, and see where they would like support and partnership, because we want to blend this in as we're training people. Not everything can always be done in a class, right? Sometimes it has to be done with activities and relationships and partnerships and things that are happening out of the class, especially when things are moving so quickly. Sometimes it's month to month, things are changing, and we can't necessarily change the curriculum that fast, but by working with people in industry, we can make sure that we continue to expose our students to what's happening now.
That's the key. Is I went like this because please partner with us. I mean, we have vehicles for customized training. If you have a business and you want to move into the cannabis industry, we have a network of subject matter experts, faculty who can come into your business and train individuals on the certifications and the knowledge needed to take you to the next step. So we have the vehicles, we have funds available for training, right? So that's also really cool. A flip side to like giving back to the community, just some another plug for our training program, NJ Canister, is that we have 5 veteran scholarships. So seats are limited because you want small class sizes to get good individualized attention and mentorship. But we do have 5 scholarships for veterans because our specific partner wanted to give back to the veteran community and offer this as a pathway into employment. So ensuring that there are those opportunities for people who have been disadvantaged in the past is really necessary to ensuring that inclusive cannabis industry.
Yeah, and I'll add one more point, Aubrey, since you reminded me on the scholarship side.
Yes.
We have a set of scholarships that are really made for change agents in any industry. They can be from any industry and going into any industry, but that includes cannabis. So that can also be, you know, a lot of what I see in the cannabis industry, it's people coming from these different disadvantaged communities that are real change agents. I would love to see some of these people come into our MBA program and then have business as one more piece of their tool set for making positive changes. So we do have those scholarships that do exist that, again, they're broad. They're for the MBA. They're not targeted to necessarily cannabis, but they are for people who see themselves as change agents and want to go forward. But I would also say that if you are in the cannabis industry and you want to sponsor scholarships, whether it's Rowan or otherwise, I think that that's a great way to partner with a university or a college and find ways, how can we make everything more accessible for a broader variety of audiences?
We also talk a lot about value and experiential learning. We talk about like as well and our education.
So I want to give like a great example. Just had a conversation last week with a group that is focusing on veterans. It's been pop in my mind when you asked the question. So perfect. But there, you know, so the person who's running this, I'll be somewhat vague because they're still developing things, but is a service disabled veteran, 100% disabled, PTSD. He's developing a program to help fellow veterans get into cultivation because it's therapeutic as well. So not everything needs to be the industrial size scope. Some of it can just be that micro license that's also available for people who want to grow cannabis and they want to develop a new skill set and they're working through their issues at the same time. So that's something that you start to see in this space. And I think you're going to see the same thing with occupational therapy as well. So I think it's going to find that an industry like this is going to be very inclusive from the type of workforce that we will develop, and also the people who are looking for, those rare opportunities where they can, again, develop a skill set, deal with an issue that they have, or maybe they have limited disabilities, and this is a great place for them to work as well. So it's you're going to see this come into a different spectrum soon as well.
What about from our education?
I know you have a fantastic like experiential learning philosophy.
Yeah, so we have different classes, more so at the undergrad than the grad level, that are focused on experiential learning. And something that we're working on for the MBA program that already exists at the undergrad is that we can build in live problems that are happening in an industry into classes and have groups of students work on it and essentially work as consultants for that company, but they're also working as consultants under the direction of faculty. So there's a lot of learning involved on all sides for those. So that's another area where I would say contact your local university or college and find out if you're in the cannabis industry and you would like to have some of that type of partnership. That's also something that I think a lot of schools and universities would be open to.
That's critical.
I'll toss it back to, it's kind of that same idea that we were talking about in terms of the transferable skills and being able to do that crossover talent and adapt. Universities can do the same thing. The same model that you have for any other subject area, it can be shifted and done for cannabis as well. So we can take our existing problem-based learning type courses, and just by working with clients from industry, that's one way that can be brought into schools.
I mean, if you're going to break into this industry, what kind of training you need for that job, right? If you're looking for a specific job title, you need to look at the qualifications and then go forth into the training programs that are necessary, whether it be a degree, MBA, or just a small micro-credential. So going on to the micro-credential side, in terms of experiential learning, that really comes out in the facilitation of the course because it's put on by industry, right? I mean, these are specific examples that come from industry. And at the end of the program, on like day 5 of the training class, you do become a dispensary technician and you role play and pretend to administer certain strands to your patient. Now that it's adult use, that section has been a little truncated for the medical vibe. But the medical section, I don't know why I said vibe, but the medical side. And then for the adult use side, it's changing. So it's definitely more of product marketing instead of a medical marketing. So that is going to expand and grow, definitely.
And what's interesting though, even though we're transitioning or expanding rather from medical to adult use, it's the same plant. So a lot of people who will be buying it as an adult consumer versus a medical card holder, they're still going to go and look for that product and would like to engage in the conversation with the dispensary associate to say, hey, I just have problems sleeping at night, or I got, this issue with the restless leg syndrome or something like that. What do you recommend? And so that the person needs to be, smart enough, trained up enough to be able to answer some of those questions without necessarily giving medical advice, but it is the same plant. It's not like there's a medical plant and an adult use plant, same plant, different strains, but.
Right. From your perspective, since you're obviously hiring right now, are your education partners in your workforce, trained to meet your needs? Where do you see the education opportunities growing, or would you get a crystal ball saying, wow, I wish that, this county college, this university would do X, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say with our staffing, like usually what's most difficult to fill is those roles that are plant touching, because it does require like that agriculture or horticulture background. And that's not the easiest to find. So like we do have training on site for people that come in that might not have like the direct plant touching experience, just to get them up to speed. So like that's really where we struggle the most, like those roles, like the roles with the chemistry and the science, like people don't necessarily have that experience within the cannabis industry yet because it's so new. So we're taking people from other industries and they can use those skills to like, figure out what we need. But I think, hopefully soon there'll be more, more available that have the actual cannabis experience. But that's basically like the most, difficult roles are the actual plant touching or touching the product with the science background, just because it's so new.
Yeah, so I'll add on to that just for clarity, and then Aubrey, you can chime in on it as well. So when we think about all of the plant touching aspects, which clearly having experience, especially hands-on experience, is so critical. One of the challenges for universities, colleges, because of the Schedule I status and the federal status, any institution that has federal funds as a component of how they exist is in danger of losing those funds if they cross certain boundaries. So we, and I'm talking for all of higher education right now, we have to be really careful when you're thinking about any kind of plant actual touching experience. For the most part, the answer is no, we can't do it. There's a couple of exceptions, but there's not that many, right? For the most part, universities and colleges are in a place where, for example, with our chemistry and biochemistry department, they've put together a good number of classes at both the grad and the undergrad, but they're studying it from a perspective, they're looking at research. They're understanding research methodology. They're understanding the chemistry of that plant. They're not actually able to touch that plant on campus and do direct research on campus. We're restricted from that. So it is a gap. Mm-hmm. And if things stay the way that they are right now in terms of Schedule I, it's going to continue to be a gap unless somehow there's another rule that comes out where universities are exempted.
Spot on. I mean, that's the biggest challenge right now when we want to talk about clinical trials, all these wonderful things that we really want to do as an industry. A lot of the universities, a lot of the community colleges are restricted what they can do. I mean, some of them are trying to figure out how to, have classes where you're growing hemp instead of cannabis, but then there's some concerns. What happens if the THC went above the proper amount for cannabis qualified as hemp? So there's a lot of concern that these universities have, and it's real, and it's stunting the growth actually. So, I mean, there are enough folks out there that have some skill set and the training, like a company like CureLeaf has the capacity to have a larger training program versus a smaller guy who just has, the micro license, and they're trying to get caught up. There's a lot of folks that were in the, in the legacy market, call it the black market, we call it the legacy market, better. And, but the legacy market folks, they're very welcome into our industry now, right? They have a skill set. They were growing something in the basement or garage. They have the beginning parts of the skill set, and then you want to get into the larger scale things, and then they have to be trained up. But there are a lot of people out there that have those skills and that desire. But to go to your point, until there's federal legalization, probably the first step will be banking, and that'll happen probably after the midterms. But once that happens, you'll start to see the flow out of other restrictions being lifted.
Okay. Employees. So if an employee is, or someone is interested in pursuing a career that you all referenced, what do you recommend? Like, where do you recommend they go? Where can they find information?
So for CureLeaf, I could just say on our website, it's cureleaf.com/careers. We list all of our, open opportunities so that people can apply directly. And then they'd be vetted by the hiring teams. And then anytime we open a new store, which has been happening a lot recently, we'll do a big campaign for the new store opening. And then in terms of training, we bring that team on board. And then we have a training team in-house that goes and trains, the whole store for a week before it opens. So we do have, a good process down for bringing people on board and getting them up to speed with something they've probably, never done before.
So switching to businesses just a bit, if somebody was interested in starting a business, is there any recommendations?
Yes, be very thoughtful about it, because here's what happens when people are trying to get together and they want to go after a license, they want to fulfill some dream. They put a team together, people that never worked together before. They're out there trying to raise some money. Make sure you understand who your team is. Make sure that that's a big thing. So when you're walking down your first week or two, everybody's excited. That would be, it's great. 2 months later, you're fighting about something. So it's really important that you understand your team for the long term, right? So that's a big issue that people have. Like, hey, you got marketing background. Hey, you got the skill set. Let's go in this together. And you find out you can't really work together. So that's a big part. The other part is funding. it is just like a lot of other businesses, but more expensive, right? So if I wanted to open up a liquor store, you could say you could draw a comparison between a liquor store and a dispensary. It's not going to be cheap to open up a liquor store. It's going to cost you, depending on the town, $750,000 to buy the store, to get the liquor license, put product on the shelves, and so forth. The same thing is going to happen with cannabis, except it's more expensive, because not every town, well, most towns, there's probably one or two still blue towns in New Jersey that don't allow alcohol sales, but for the most part, every town has a liquor store, right? In New Jersey, with towns being able to opt out and not have any cannabis businesses whatsoever, it makes the real estate value for cannabis businesses in the towns that have opted in much more expensive. So the supply and demand on real estate is actually, is becoming an issue too. So you have to go in there with just, your eyes wide open and making sure that you have the right team and that you have the financing behind you. Some banks are now offering loans. I'll give a plug to BCB Bank. So Bayonne Community Bank is now doing traditional business loans. That's rare. So most banks, if you went to TD Bank or Bank of America or whatever, you're gonna find that they're just gonna shut the door and you got to go and all that stuff. So it's a lot of it is friends and family fundraising and or venture capitalists, people who are going to invest in this industry. For people who want to get property but they can't afford it, there are real estate investment trusts, REITs that are out there that fund cannabis businesses. So you're really getting your core together, putting your right team together, and know that you need to have the money to get through fruition. God forbid you spent $500,000 and stopped because you couldn't move forward, because you couldn't get the financing. So that's a big part of just getting your startup ready.
And I was just going to extend on 2 points that Scott had mentioned. So some of the advice that I give to students that ask about what should I be thinking about is, first of all, we say, yes, think about the business idea that you have, but don't limit yourself to plant touching. There are more jobs than just opening a dispensary or opening a grow facility. Again, all of those ancillary businesses that are necessary. We encourage our students to think about that. We encourage them to really think about the finances. Are they ready to do something where it could take them 1, 2, 3, 4 years before they actually start to see a real return on their investment? Because depending on what they're choosing, it's not necessarily, you could have the best concept, you could have the best team, you could do everything right. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to launch within 6 months or a year and a half, depending on what you're trying to do. And then I'll take it one step further for your thought about knowing your team and being prepared with your team. Because of the challenges right now with banking, there's a lot of challenges with financing, and you need to be really smart going into it and make sure that you don't get yourself into a situation where suddenly you're a victim of a predatory lender.
Oh, for sure.
So it's just go into it with your eyes open and know that it takes sometimes a little bit of additional research, investigation, checking people out, because everything isn't all set and structured and ready to go yet. It's still really, really early.
So BIA, largest business association in New Jersey, sole proprietors up to our largest corporations in the state. You had mentioned that there is a lot of opportunities. It's just not, in the dealing with the plants essentially. So for our businesses listening, our not-for-profits listening, our educational partners listening today, how can they get more incorporated into this business?
So one of the things I recommend people do, and I'll give my organization a plug, the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association is a trade group for the cannabis industry. We work with the NJBIA, we work with other groups, we work with higher education. For those folks who say, for example, you own a fleet of vans because you're subleased or subcontracting to Amazon, right? You buy more vans, and then all of a sudden you're now doing delivery services for the cannabis industry for dispensaries, or you're getting a distribution license or a warehouse license, or wholesale license rather, and you're moving product around the state. So there's simple things that someone says, oh, well, I got all these vans, I got these drivers, I got this business plan. All I need to do is apply for this distribution license, delivery license, or what have you. Those are but how do I get in here is joining organizations, NJBIA, NJCBA, and getting engaged and doing the networking that we all do. That's how it's going to happen. You're not going to Google your solution. You're going to have to get out, find it, talk to people, and interact.
And I'm right on. So on your website, do you have
supply chain offices or vendor offices. Like, you know, if I said to you, I remember go check out Curaleaf's website and see how, here's how I, as a marketing firm, or as a logistics firm, might be able to work.
Yeah, I believe there's definitely on our website, probably like an email address or someone to reach out to if you wanted to get in touch with us, because we love to partner with like our community and people in, you know, local areas. So I would think that's definitely available there.
I would assume from a higher ed perspective too, partnering with county marketing firms alluded to, county notes, you know, and trying to reach out to those businesses saying, hey, if you want to upskill your employees, if they're looking to go to a master's or receive a master's degree, come our way as well. We're open for business.
Absolutely. And I will reach out to universities as well. Like I want to get both of your guys' information. If I'm doing, you know, like a lot of recruitment in the area, yeah, and just ask, like, do you guys have a cannabis program at your school? Like, you know, would you be willing to post our jobs at your, you know, your career fair or whatever you have? Like I go to career fairs all the time just to have, you know, if they will allow us. Some universities, they won't allow, you know, Curaleaf to be there, but we, you know, we want to be present and have everybody know that, you know, we're looking. And we want these people that are in these, you know, these programs at these universities, because again, like not a lot of people have this hands-on experience. So to have that is so valuable.
So we talked a little bit about legislation on the federal level, and the clinical trial component is very real, right, for that experiential learning opportunity and the challenges it presents. What, if you had to pick something, is there anything that needs to be changed in the existing state law that would help you attract the workforce of the future?
It's hard to say because we're still not fully realized yet, right? So what holes are we missing? What hurdles do we put up that we don't realize are hurdles just yet? That's going to all sort of come to fruition over the next year. So all these applications. So they're in December 15th, they opened up for cultivation and manufacturing licenses. More than 100 have been approved already. We have another meeting later this month. We're going to hear about another dozen, 50, 60, like, so we're going to hear all these things. So attracting the workforce and what legislative changes we need. I have legislative ideas to change the structure on how we're doing licensing and stuff like that, that I think would make it a smoother process. But, you know, when it comes to, you know, the legislation that's required to attract employees to our workforce, I don't think that legislation is going to do that. I think it's the people on this panel, people out here, people over here. You know, those are the folks that are going to really build up this whole entire workforce and create those workforce development programs to enable people to be successful.
And I'll just say on my end, it's difficult because, you know, we're a global company, but nationally, each state has different regulations. And like, you know, in Pennsylvania, somebody might be able to, you have to get badged to work at the cultivation center or the dispensary. You might be able to get badged in Pennsylvania, but you can't get badged in New Jersey because of something like maybe on your background check or something like that. So it really depends on the location and what the legislation is within that state. Yes.
We deal with that all the time across every district.
Yeah.
So not new to us either. So before if anyone has any questions, I did want to ask, you know, a final question, really around, you know, if you had to look into the crystal ball, what would be those workforce challenges, needs moving forward? What have we not shared with our participants here today?
I think we shared a lot. Honestly, I think it's the challenge we have right now is, like I said, it's so brand new. 12 license holders are going to turn into 212 license holders and so forth. And so I'm super pleased to see the higher education community really embrace this as an industry and getting out front on it. That part right there is part of the normalization of this as an industry. So while we're still dealing with federal issues, normalizing this and say, like, Johnny's got a job, you know, working in the cannabis industry, and he got his degree from Rowan, and he's super excited about it. I mean, that's awesome. And that's really what's exciting about creating a brand new industry. But I think I think it's just us continuing to work together collectively, the license holders, higher education, organizations like ours, NJBIA, NJCBA, will really be part of it. But a lot of folks are out there, they're just, they're not paying attention to these things and they are creating their own hurdles. So like I said, you can't Google your way to a successful license application. You need to be out there networking and you really need to be engaged in the process.
Yeah, I think some barriers is really just the federal legalization issue. And if you all know, there's training grants available for pivoting professionals who are underemployed or unemployed to reskill for the industry administered through the Department of Labor. You can't really use those funds because it's Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds from the feds to get these training grants for cannabis training. So federal legalization really is the linchpin in ensuring an inclusive future for all.
I just a question, you repeat the question, they were having problems earlier.
Absolutely.
Your question.
I'll talk about it. So I could mention $50,000 talk about $1.3 million, and yet some education for everyone. So when they mentioned some of the Budweiser, when we move from school to that number.
That's a fantastic question. And it is just once we get more dispensaries out there. So cultivation is usually like an industrial park or a greenhouse on a farm. Same with manufacturing. So the community sees the dispensary. That's what they typically see. Once they see a dispensary and once they realize that it's just a storefront, it could look the same as a Hallmark store, an Apple store, or a liquor store, it doesn't matter. Once they start to see these things and all the awfulness that they may have, the preconceived notions, outdated stereotypes and stigmas, once they go like, oh, this isn't a big deal. Like right now, people are commenting because there's long lines at Curaleaf. Congratulations, by the way. They see these long lines because we just opened up. Those lines go away. It's a regular parking lot. It's just a regular it's consumer experience. And I think, sure, we all guess. I'm a little guilty of that as well. I got a 21-year-old, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old, both of whom just texted me while I'm talking to you guys. So, but I recognize that I've been very open with them, and it is not a big deal for them and also their friends. So they're in that group that we're all concerned about, but it's not a big deal to them. They're teaching medical marijuana and health classes in the K-12 programs. So, it's not something that's unusual. It's something that they've been taught at health class from a medical perspective. Not every school is doing this, but a lot of schools are doing it now. Just getting that comfort level, driving by and see that the boogeyman wasn't there. There weren't people outside, smoking weed. They're going to see that it's just another normal business. So it depends on the town, which is interesting. I won't mention specific towns, but if you go to the Northwest, in a farming community in the Northwest of the state, they are shunning. They're coming up, they are literally coming up to township meetings with pitchforks. That we can't have this in our community, but it's an agricultural community. Well, we can't have this type. And they make some outrageous statements. And then a lot of those township members of council, they don't move forward. You go to a different part of the state, another agricultural part of the state, and they're embracing. We're an agricultural, of course. I mean, I'm talking to Republican towns here and a Republican town there. So it's not just a Democrat town or anything. I'm saying the same type of community, but the attitude's a little bit different. So that's the hardest part. And this integration is really going to come down to, again, once we see this as not the evil industry that some perceive, that it's a agricultural industry that actually solves a lot of societal challenges. People addicted to opioids, people addicted to alcohol. This is a different type of a plant that can solve some of your medical needs or some of your recreational needs without having the addiction or the overdoses that can occur. So once we see the integration of all this, it's going to happen. But it's just going to take a little while.
So I just want to leave, we only have a few minutes left anyway, some closing remarks, but I just want to thank you because what I'm hearing here today by the breadth of this panel is, we have our higher education institutions that have put together programs and curricula to address the workforce, educate our workforce, just like any other field, that these types of jobs literally range from the very scientific in terms of chemistry and other things to our legal, lawyers that are going to be needed, and down to our retail stores as well. And then I'm hearing from the industry, viable business sitting right here, and Scott and all his advocacy efforts, that this is a place where the workforce can look to get educated and to get a good paying job. And for our business partners to be able to engage both with our higher education institutions as well as our provider community. So thank you. Any final thoughts?
I think you covered it definitely in terms of higher ed.
Moderator, good job.
Yeah, no, seriously, partner with us. I mean, we're ready. We are viable partners. We have individuals who are ready to be at your business. So definitely partner.
Yeah, that's really it. That's partnership.
So I'd like to thank you all once again for spending the morning with us. Very informative conversation. I'll turn it back over to our president, Michelle.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Two great panels, a lot of great information shared in two different realms, right? Building the industry on one side and having the pipeline of talent to be there to bring it to the responsible type of industry that we know we're going to become here in the state of New Jersey, to the challenges we faced on the other side. And I think, I would say for every challenge, there's an opportunity, and it's incumbent upon all of us to lean in to those challenges and create opportunities from them. And BIA is here to be a resource. And I would say this, from what you heard today, we didn't have a lot of time for a lot of questions this morning. If you have questions leaving here today, or you want to help us on what the FAQs need to be to help you to go back and deal with these issues in your workplace, or otherwise, please drop us some notes on that. Let us know. The dialogue doesn't end here. We just teed it up today. This has a long way to go. Okay, a long way to go, and we're going to be there riding the wave the whole time. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our partners for today's program. Their names have been in front of you the whole time, but thank you to NJM Insurance Group and our event partner Rowan University. It truly is about collaboration, and thank you all for your collaboration today. Everyone continue to be well, be safe. Again, use it as a resource, and thanks for being here today.